Hi there, and a very warm welcome to Season 6, Episode 44 of People Soup. It's Ross McIntosh here.
And there doesn't really seem to be anywhere for people to put it and have an easier submissions process than a traditional academic journal. And then the second point to that is that I love organizational psychology and applied psychology in general. I feel like we have so many great insights. And I don't know if you found this, Ross, but anytime you mention it to someone who doesn't know anything about org psych, maybe you talk a bit about your work, everyone's so interested because they can see the impact for their own lives, because in their own company or where they work or their team, or even in their family, it might not always be in the workplace, but they can see it in their own applied context.
P-Supers, this episode is the second part of my conversation with Yass Rad. Yass is the founder of Were Unpublished, a part-time consultant at Affinity Health at Work, and a PhD student researching perfectionism in the workplace and ACT interventions for well-being at City St George's, University of London. We discuss Yass's systematic review of workplace acceptance and commitment therapy and how interventions change psychological flexibility sub-processes. Yass also introduces her great new platform, Were Unpublished, a website for practitioners and students to share unpublished applied psychology research via short, accessible submissions. And there will also be a supportive community. Thanks for tuning in, folks. People Soup is a podcast that mixes stories, science, and a sprinkle of daftness to explore what helps people thrive at work and beyond. Our mission is to give you the ingredients for a better work life through insights and stories grounded in behavioural science, especially acceptance and commitment therapy and other evidence-based approaches. Before we go on, let's take a quick scoot over to the news desk. Reviews are in for our last episode, which was part 1 of my chat with Yass, called Balancing Art and Science, the Dual Passions of Yass Rad. Over on LinkedIn, Amanda Super said, "This is a great episode of the Brilliant People Soup podcast. Highly recommended. Thank you, Ross and Yass, for accompanying me on my dog walk through the woods this afternoon. I really enjoyed listening to you both." Well, thank you, Amanda, for sharing your reflections. And I really do love to get your reviews, so please do post them on the socials or contact me directly. So, it's time to get a brew on and have a listen to part 2 of my chat with Yass Rad. So Yass, in this part I really want to focus in on the first paper from your PhD, which is the effects of workplace acceptance and commitment therapy programs on psychological flexibility sub-processes, a systematic review. And I also want to talk about your new emerging project, Were Unpublished, because I'm a big fan of both. Spoiler alert.
Oh my gosh.
Let's talk about the paper first. And maybe I'll start off by just talking about the title. So the bit I wanted to highlight on the title is psychological flexibility sub-processes. So for those of you who are more familiar with ACT, ACT is made up of 6 sub-processes. And Paul and Yass are getting really curious about which of these sub-processes have the most impact for people in the workplace. So I wonder if I could start just by telling us a bit about this systematic review, Yass.
No, definitely. And this was and is my first PhD study. So for me, what I really wanted to understand is almost get a lay of the land of psychological flexibility in the workplace. And so this study kind of came out because I think it's pretty well documented in the literature now that ACT is super beneficial for various outcomes such as burnout and other sort of mental health outcomes that have been measured in the work context and beyond. So that's kind of more well known. But I typically, in general, always have an interest in sort of looking under the lid of especially big processes like psychological flexibility or, let's say, mindfulness or whatever it may be, even perfectionism, any multidimensional area that has loads of different sub-areas. Would that make it up, like psychological flexibility? I'm always wanting to know about each one. For me, it's not enough to look at it overall. And so doing some digging I saw that a lot of the, and through sort of conversations with some of my amazing sort of co-authors, obviously my supervisor, Paul, but, Ariana Prudenzi as well. There's so many different co-authors that we had loads of conversations and realized that there were some sort of the reviews that had been done would often, and for good reason, look at psychological flexibility overall and how ACT training through psychological flexibility would lead to the benefit of these outcomes that they're interested in.
Mm.
So with that, what we couldn't see was how and what parts of PsychFlex were being changed through these interventions. And what was more discouraging and slightly alarming was that sometimes these studies couldn't see that ACT was changing psychological flexibility. So sometimes they would see that, and sometimes they would see the change on the outcomes, but not through PsychFlex.
Mm.
So, there's loads of reasons for why that might have been, but through conversations, we thought, no one has kind of looked at the next level down, which is those sub-processes of psychological flexibility and how they change before and after an ACT intervention. Because if I get nitty gritty, when you pull loads of measures into one overall measure, such as in processes like meta-analyses, commonly they are looking at psychological flexibility. And so they bring in the measures and measure it as a whole rather than each subsection, because that's the data that they can get. And to get enough power to make that make sense, that's what they do.
Mm.
So through that process, you lose all the granular detail. So you can't see if, for example, an ACT intervention means that people experience higher levels of acceptance afterwards, but not higher levels of present moment awareness. And that detail you can't see, but you can see that PsychFlex may or may not have changed. But if one thing goes up and one thing goes down, it might look like nothing's changed, but actually one thing's gone up and one thing's gone down.
This is a natural home for your curiosity,
Oh,
no?
yeah. These are the bits that I really love about research. So PsychFlex being multidimensional and perfectionism being multidimensional constructs means that I have endless fun trying to dig underneath all these bigger concepts.
So tell us what a systematic review is. Just in brief, give us the headlines.
So a systematic review, it can also end up in a meta-analysis, which would do some of the more data crunching,
Mm-hmm.
such as pooling some things and finding bigger effects, which are really helpful for some areas of research. But a systematic review essentially will look at all the studies that are relevant to the research question you have and do a search for those studies and pull together all the different findings to sort of get an overarching conclusion almost about what's been said and done. So I actually really love systematic reviews for that reason. They really help you get a clearer understanding. And if anyone's done any research or has done a master's or anything, you'll know that when you find a systematic review on the topic you're interested in, it feels like you found the golden ticket to understanding it because they've done all the work for you and have crunched all these papers and all these findings and given you the headlines. So has that a good explanation of a systematic review?
Yeah, I love it. And you're right, it is like the golden ticket. And you're the author.
Oh yeah, yeah. Now I get to be one of the people that helps create one. Great fun.
Now, I wonder if you could just give us the maybe 2 or 3 headlines of what you found from the systematic review.
So with this systematic review, and all systematic reviews will find a different number of papers, obviously, that are relevant to the question. Because we were looking at sub-processes of psychological flexibility and studies that had measured them individually rather than using whole measures, which there's a lot of research doing whole measures, obviously.
Mm.
We found 30 studies, and we chose to include not just randomized and controlled trials. We also included the non-randomized, non-controlled trials, because I think it's really important, especially in the work setting, to not just focus on sort of what people consider a gold standard of research. I think
Mm.
even sort of smaller samples or or even sort of just pre-post without a control group, sometimes that's more realistic to operate in the work setting and in applied settings in general. So yeah, we found 30 studies, and after doing all the crunching of what they found, I guess one finding we saw was that there was a sort of difference in consistency of findings for each of the sub-processes, which
Mm.
in a way unlike some of the reviews before that kind of sometimes showed ACT impacting or sort of creating change in psych-flex, yes or no, depending on the study and the context. With this, when you look at the sub-process level, it's a bit more of a positive picture, which is that especially for certain sub-processes, so diffusion and contact with the present moment, there's a much more consistent finding and evidence base to say that ACT interventions do create change in those processes and therefore outcomes as well. So I'd say that was the sort of core finding, is that it's slightly more consistent when you look under the lid.
Yeah, lovely. And that's such an interesting finding, that things that had changed over the course of the training in these papers were the cognitive diffusion. Now, that's about changing your relationship with thoughts, emotions, memories, sensations, urges, and contact with the present moment is exactly what it says on the tin. Now, for those of you who may be listening who are more on the practitioner side, we're going to continue this conversation over on my fledgling new private podcast called People Soup Practitioners. For those of you who want to just continue listening to Yass's wisdom, we're going to move on to talk about your project We Were Unpublished.
Lovely. Go for it.
Just before we move on, that fledgling private podcast I mentioned is called People Soup Practitioners, and there'll be more news on this very soon. Back to the chat. So, Yaz, I'd like to explore your other project, or one of your other projects, We Were Unpublished.
Please.
Can I just start by tell me about the rationale and motivation for creating it?
So it came a couple of years ago now, actually, when I had been doing my PhD for a couple of years. And through that experience, I was, supporting in a couple of different seminars and bits and bobs at City and trying my hand at a few different things. And I've also now been working in organizational psychology since the master's, which I finished in 2020 something, 21, 20, or either in COVID. I forget those years. They've all blended into one. So during COVID, I finished my master's. And since then, I've been lucky enough to work in the field with various, not only consultants, but practitioners, talking to people like you, Ross, and the team at City, and been exposed to a great network in the field. And I guess seen a lot of great work be done and heard about the issues and the concerns and the difficulties with publishing research, specifically for consultants and practitioners who aren't academics at a university or professors. And it just frustrated me. And I just felt like there were so many great people doing great things. And I wanted to, why was I only hearing about it once a year at a conference and had no idea that had happened? And also at a conference, it's so hard to go to all the talks because there's often multiple at a time. And you miss out on the different knowledge. Anyway, so I think it stemmed from just knowing there's more to learn than just what I read. And also I've done that systematic review. I've done a few reviews through work, through my work as well. So reviewing is quite a frequent task of mine that I enjoy. And knowing that I'm not reviewing everything because I don't see everything because some stuff isn't in the areas I'm reviewing. So it stemmed from that, knowing that there's stuff I can't access and would love to learn. And there doesn't really seem to be anywhere for people to put it and have an easier submissions process than a traditional academic journal. And then the second point to that is that I love organizational psychology and applied psychology in general. I feel like we have so many great insights. And I don't know if you found this, Ross, but anytime you mention it to someone who doesn't know anything about org psych, maybe you talk a bit about your work, everyone's so interested because they can see the impact for their own lives, because in their own company or where they work or their team, or even in their family, it might not always be in the workplace, but they can see it in their own applied context. So knowing that people are so interested in what we do, yet we don't always get our words out there to the non community, let's say the general public. If I can create a platform which enables work to be seen outside our field too, because it's accessible to read and engaging, then I would like to bring our work outwards more.
And it speaks to you that you noticed this problem, you are frustrated by it, and you've done something about it.
Let's say it leaked out of the box that I tried to put it.
Yeah, I love this. I love this theme of leaking. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if that's the nicest image, but
So it's if I got this right, it's not you criticizing the world of academic publishing. It's you saying there's lots of research happening, maybe from master's students,
Mm,
maybe from lots of PhD students as
yeah,
well.
lots of PhD students.
And this high quality, rigorous research
Hmm.
can gather dust on a shelf
Hmm.
rather than being scrutinized and appreciated by people who might not be able to find it.
Yes. And I think that, I also am a big, maybe this is from the sort of more creative side of me, but even if you read something you don't agree with, or let's say you don't think it's been done right for whatever reason, because you can have that with academic research published in journals. You can read it and think that wasn't done how I would have done it, or, I think that is also a super helpful feeling to have, because then you think, how would I do it? And then you can do it. How you might, that's how you evolve and learn more, is by, if something, frustrates you or you don't agree with it, you have then got some ammunition to do the next thing in a way. And so, yeah, it doesn't feel like, journals and academic publications they serve a great purpose, they are there for a reason, and they always will be. And, I'm sure they are
Hmm.
evolving as well over time, but it kind of feels like, yes, and how about the rest of it, the rest of the work that would never really enter that, because it's not that type of work, or
Hmm.
people don't have the time to dedicate to publication processes.
That time point, or people are bamboozled by the process or
Yeah.
fearful of it.
Well, it's almost a full-time job, especially
Yes.
if you're doing multiple, if you're trying to, let's say you have multiple pieces of research trying to get published, it could take a lot of time, and also time elapsed between when you start the process to when it actually sees or hits the page, let's say, and it comes out. We were quite
Hmm.
lucky with our systematic review. I think it took maybe 6 months or something like that from the time we submitted it,
Hmm.
which is actually quite rapid, but that's still 6 months. We had done the research, it was done. And I like the idea of creating a sort of quicker access point where, you could submit it and have it on the website in a month, and then you can share it with
Hmm.
a client in a month, and, or whatever it is. I like that speed.
I love what you say about when you talk about your work, people are curious, which is, it's kind of understandable. And it's also a bit frustrating that the profile of organizational, occupational, or business psychologists isn't higher. I think it's getting better.
Mm,
I used to say when I started doing a few guest lectures, like to the students, the master students, I used to say, get out there and make some noise. Because I'm frustrated when an organization collapses or there's a crisis of leadership.
mm.
There was never anyone on the news going, let's look at this from an organizational psychology perspective. But now I think there is a bit more.
Yeah, and I hope that increases and continues. And I guess in a way, this feels like my contribution to helping create some of that noise, because I think we've got some great things to shout about that could ultimately help lots of people.
Yeah. And from a practitioner perspective, it could help us find out what people used with different populations,
Yeah.
give insights into the context of a population. Like, I'd love to look at studies around that were unpublished around. So, for instance, some of the populations I work with are ballet dancers, engineers in high performance environments, people in banking.
Yeah.
What's that context like for them? What did you do and what were
Mm.
the impact? I think that's invaluable for practitioners. Yeah, what worked?
Yeah, and I do think that that's sometimes, even reviewing the literatures for various things, often something we can't see is that sector specificity, and seeing what changes
Mm.
from sector or context or team size, or just hearing different people's approaches and experiences of trying things, I think is super useful.
And listeners, just to let you know that I was fortunate enough to be on a panel which Yaz was hosting at the British Psychological Society conference for the Division of Occupational Psychology. See, even that's all a mouthful, isn't
Yeah, it's a
it?
long one. So funny to.
And I was fortunate enough to be on a panel, which you were hosting, with Claire and Louis, and also Jerry Ann, talking more from a psychometrician view of publishing. And we had a good old chat. And I think the concept of We Were Unpublished really resonated with people. I've since done a lecture to the master students at Birkbeck, University of London, told them about it, And they were like, oh, yeah, this is brilliant. We love it. How can we get involved? So I think once it's presented to people, thanks to your tenacity and creativity, I think it's really resonating. Yes.
That's very exciting to hear, because that's really the hope. I was always, if no one finds it helpful, I won't carry on. I don't need to. It's only for helping people, really.
So tell me more. So if I'm a practitioner, in time, will I be able to come and search on, what will it be, like a database or?
Yeah, it's essentially a website, and we've got a submission about to come out. Because I've been guinea pigging the process. It's still really early days. So if you're a practitioner, firstly, please submit any work and findings that you have, so we can share them with others. Or if you've got an old master's or PhD study that you haven't ever shown, please share it with me so we can share it with others. But the hope is that once we've built up more of those people's submissions and articles, I guess, on the website, then yeah, you can come and take a look and see what people have done in different contexts. You could share it because, one thing that's, as one of my personal values being beauty, it's important to me for things to look and feel engaging. And especially for an external, non-academic audience, hopefully the links to the site to certain studies that you found interesting or inspiring or angering even will be something that you can share with a client and share with a colleague or a friend, and they could also read it and digest it in their way. And it feels like something that you can share and help each other learn more about different
Mm.
things.
And say I've got my master's dissertation is like, it's over 10 years old now, but it was looking at the experience of
Get it out that, dust it off that shelf.
organizational politics through the lens of ACT.
Oh, I want to read that.
So if I wanted to share that, would I just submit it as it is, or do you want me to tailor it and summarize it for your audience? What would be best?
So on the website now, we've got a submissions link. So you can go on it and it will show you almost like chunks of where to put it. So it would typically be you summarizing it. Sometimes I know some master's courses or courses in general will make you also write like a narrative summary or like a blog post version of your dissertation or your study. So it'd be more aligned to that type of work. And you'll see in the form, the ideal is that in total it won't be more than 2 pages. So the word counts for each chunk is quite small. So yeah, you could maybe have your study up that you did and then have the form up and kind of summarize, and also you have creative freedom to make the wording more engaging. If you want to talk about it in bullet points or talk about it in more conversational tone, that's very appreciated because that makes it more accessible to a non-scientific community. So any casual summarizing and tone or voice changes that you want to make, you're very welcome to. And yeah, you just follow through the form. But I'm also very aware that this is such a new concept that, the form, again, might not feel suitable for everyone. And so in which case, you're very welcome to email me. And we can, if your piece of work doesn't fit into that sort of constraints, which we have to have had, then I would happily sort of have a more one-to-one discussion to figure out how we can make it work, because ultimately there is that freedom and that's important to me to have. So yeah, the website's got that submission form. It's got some sort of criteria and guidance as to the kind of thing that we're looking for. And yeah, there's also some reader ethos if you're reading how to view things, because there is a review process, but it's a friendly one. So not a rigorous scientific review. So readers also need to exercise their autonomy and caution when reading, as you should with everything you read these days.
Lovely. That's really clear. So I'm pretty sure I wrote an executive summary, so I could
Perfect.
dust that off
Mhm.
and work out how to share that. So watch this space.
Watch this
Yes, I
space.
will go to wereunpublished.com and
Come published, because we were is past. You were all published if you come to me.
yes. Now, yes, there's a community aspect to this too. Tell us about that.
So this is what I'm also really passionate about as a sort of second point, but it's a space. And another thing I observed was that a lot of us doing this work, or practitioners, we often, maybe work more flexibly or are doing this work and writing this stuff up in our spare time or in sort of non-standard working hours. Let's say you're, like me, you're a consultant, but you're also doing some study and PhD work and that sort of thing. So not only for this community, but also to bring external people who are also working on interesting things into the community, I wanted to have a space where we could all kind of almost help each other out and get inspired. Kind of like a book club, but not a book club because it's not about books. Maybe you meet up and you work together virtually just to have someone to work with on a Saturday morning or early morning or evening. And you can all kind of, I guess, share knowledge, share thoughts, share ideas, get inspired and come together really. And hopefully as part of that, I'll have things like events, but it's just to watch the space that you can register your interest on the website. And as soon as I release or open up the membership to that, that will come out because where the research aspect and the submissions and the publishing of those is always free of charge. This community will be like a sort of small membership community and in a way will help sort of fund the, the platform, but also create value in a different way.
Lovely, thank you. Yeah, so folks, if you're interested, you'll find a link in the show notes, or you can go right now to wewereunpublished.com. So, yes, I've really loved this conversation. I wonder if you have an insight or a reflection that you'd invite the listener to sit with.
I would sit with the thing I've been telling myself, which is being comfortable, being your sort of holistic, authentic self and working in that way and unapologetic about doing so in your work.
Beautiful. Thank you. Thank you, Yaz. And thank you so much for joining me. I feel like we've covered so much. Really grateful for your work out there in the world and for being your own authentic, beautiful, weird, funny, disco dancing self.
Well, thank you, Ross. Thank you for having me and thank you for facilitating this conversation and doing so amazingly. You are a star.
Oh, bless you. Right back at you. That's it, Pea Supers. The second part of my chat with Yaz in the bag. You'll find the show notes for this episode at peoplesoup.captivate.fm or wherever you get your podcasts. Now more than ever, you can help me reach more people with the special People Soup ingredients, stuff that could be really useful for them. So please, if you found this episode useful, do share it with people you know. And also, if you subscribe and drop us a review, it helps us get recognised in the charts. Thanks to Andy Glenn for his spoon magic and Alex Engelberg for his vocals. But most of all, dear listener, thanks to you. Look after yourselves, Pea Supers, and bye for now. You'd used it, so I felt comfortable using it, but I think it's a lovely word.
I love that word personally. Is it offensive that I use that word?
No, I think if I call someone weird, it's a term of endearment, to be honest.
Yeah, I also refer to myself as weird a lot. My mum's always like, why would you say that? I'm like, well, I don't think it's a bad thing. So I'm okay with that. I love that word.